This is the light which shall give revelation to the Gentiles, the mystery of God in the world, for the salvation of the world.
How is it going, everybody? My name is Jordan Pacheco.
And I'm Rudy Carlos.
And oh, Rudy. Oh, Deo Gratias, am I right?
Good.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. Today's a good day.
Today's
it's the day after. But I think the energy is still there, you know?
That's completely right. I'm sure that our audience knows what we're talking about, but why don't you tell the people? Why are we so happy today, Rudy?
Well, it turns out that the draft opinion of the I think it's what is it? Jackson's Women's Health versus Dobbs?
Yeah.
Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Office, or
these
whatever.
are all words, yes.
Well, that ended up being revoked, and now Roe versus Wade is gone with history. So what does that mean? It means we won.
We won. Well, we won one. We won one major,
just a small victory.
One theater of the war.
It is a major victory. You're right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, let's just take a step back. First off, I have, for our audience who can't see, this is what we call in our thread whiskey in hand. So so you'll see a celebratory sip as the good Lord provides. So I guess people are calling it like the Dobbs decision, which might just be easier to say, or just the death of Roe v. Wade, because oh my gosh, did you ever imagine? I mean, think about how much praying, supplication, fasting, the conversion of hearts and mind, really going out there, just being militant about to be pro-life, to be on the side of biology and all these other kinds of things. But I never thought in a million years, really, that it would be repealed like this when we were young men. That's kind of crazy to me in such a short span of time for our lives, you know?
I think so too. You know, all the rumors have been spinning for a few weeks now, ever since the draft opinion was leaked in May, late May. And, you know, I kind of had a feeling at the back of the mind that this was going to happen. You know, it's going to be great. But at the same time, there was a little bit of reservation, because I would say, well, what if they actually change course?
Right.
What if they decide that? Yeah, because, you know, one of the guests that we have on the show all the time for Catholic Drive Time, Brent Haynes, he's a really cool guy. You know, he talks about how these opinions change. They could change, you know, as one of the judges is going into the office. Like, you know, things change. Mm-hmm. And so I was holding my breath, but at the same time, I kind of felt like it was going to happen. But here we are, and it's amazing. It's I don't want to downplay it. Like, you know, what I said earlier, it's a small victory. Yes, it's true, but this actually is pretty big. From the federal perspective, you know, now it's kicked back to the states, and a lot of the states, we've seen a movement in the states to go and put these trigger laws into effect that would ban abortion. Here in Texas, it's completely done. Like, there's no way you can get an abortion here anyway. But you know, there's a couple other states that are going to follow suit, and there's some that are even, you know, more pro-life than the ones that we have here in Texas. So it's pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, one of my favorite things to hear was there's like trigger laws, learning about that, and how Utah, for instance, had an automatic trigger law the same day. I think it was Missouri and Tennessee and all these other places were just like, yep, nope. Unfortunately, we don't have that in Colorado. In Colorado, we have full-blown infanticide. That was our bill that we passed last year. So when we're Sodom and Gomorrah, it'll be Colorado on that list, unfortunately. Parts of Colorado, at least.
Come down to Texas.
I know, you know, honestly, everything's going to be Texas. Well, Texas, now that there's so much stuff to talk about. This is a little tangent, but now that Texas GOP has declared the 2020 election illegitimate, it's only a matter of time before Texas secedes again. So let's go. Honestly, and this is the thing. So yeah, in the scope of things, on one hand, it's like, you know, children are still being killed and our fight's not done. It is very important, that being said, in times of war, and that's what we're in, right? I'm not saying we're not threatening physical violence, but we do know that the greatest weapon, the rosary, has clearly triumphed. And on the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart, it triumphed. And so this just means that we're going to have to fight in the states now. Thank God that the federal government isn't involved in this absolutely terrible atrocity. Well, it's trying to be in some cases, you could say. But thank God it's kind of removed itself, because honestly, the fact that we are people so far removed from the natural law, from common sense, from obviously science and biology, and certainly from religion, just speaks volume to the decrepitness, unfortunately, that is still inside and has crept inside this country. And as we see this with this weekend, I don't know if you're staying out of, I'm sure there's some fun in downtown Houston. I'm not going up to Denver. Because it's not just a matter of different opinion anymore in the 2020s. It is a matter of full-blown political violence and actual domestic terrorism. There are people who, by the virtue of you saying we shouldn't kill babies, it's not that they don't just like you. They hate you. They really genuinely hate you. There are entire lawmakers who hate you. There are entirety of Catholic lawmakers and people who hate you because they think that they know that you are a threat to the faulty demonic convictions which they themselves have drunk in for decades, hook, line, and sinker, right?
That's that's such an interesting thing that you bring up, and I just want to focus on something you just said, the demonic, the TFP, which is tradition, family, and property. And I think you've seen them. You're aware, maybe, dear listener, you've seen these guys out there. They show up and they do rosary rallies. Some of them have red sashes and stuff like that, and they have big banners and stuff. Well, in their videos, they do a really good job of showing the activists who are for abortion. They tend to go to college campuses and stuff like that. And it's so surprising to me when I watch these videos, because the first thing that really comes to mind is the fact that when they get to praying the rosary, when they get to just standing in the campus and proclaiming the truth, like, for example, that men are men and women are women, inevitably big bands of leftists, because colleges are leftist institutions anyway, they just come and they rally around them and they film everything. So as you're watching the people, you can see the frenzy in their eyes. You could see the demonic oppression that these kids, I mean, they're kids, right? I mean, they're like 18 years old going to college. They're still kids. You can see how badly they are demonically oppressed, and they just start foaming at the mouth, sometimes literally, and shouting and screaming and just going wild. And so there's something there. I think this decision is saving a lot of children from being murdered. And I think for the left, people who are not Catholic, people who are politically left-leaning, this is their sacrament. This is the sacrament of the left. And it's in jeopardy for them. And so you're going to see a rise, as you said, Jordan, a rise of demonic activity. What's it going to look like? It's going to look like a summer of rage, just like we've experienced already in the past. What was that? 2020? 2020 was the summer that was right after George Floyd, and you saw what that happened. What was that? What that was like. But something like that can certainly happen again.
This is the terrible, unfortunate thing that happens when you have societies that remove themselves from God. And again, we have a God of faith and a God of reason. There is, by every biological metric that we have, by every scientific idea, by the natural reason which we have implanted in us, it is not a matter of divine revealed truth that it is something wrong when a species wantonly kills its unborn. We don't even fathom this in the animal kingdom. And so at the end of the day, what we have people who believe broadly that rights, duties, the way societies ought to be governed are an imprint of the divine, that they are revealed through divine law. They're also revealed through natural law, through reason and through faith. And that these things are not at odds with each other. They can work in harmony with each other. Then there are people who fundamentally believe that what a right is comes down to license, that liberty means the ability to do whatever you want, irregardless of consequence, circumstance, and irregardless of the moral ramifications. Is this actually a good choice? Because when we knock God from the pedestal, we make ourselves God. And so we have the power to destroy, to create. I hate, there's a phrase you hear all over, right? Which is that to speak your truth into existence. And I think that this is actually a sort of a blasphemy, or at least I think it's a sort of heresy. It's a sort of humanistic heresy, and this is why: because the only one who by the virtue of speech can create physical reality, truth itself, is God, right? At the beginning of everything, like, there was nothing, right? And then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So when people say, "Well, I'm just going to speak my truth," and it's irregardless of the truth. There's no such thing as the truth. There's only my truth, my reality, these sorts of things. We are taking that divine onto ourselves in a way that we were never meant to do as creatures. This is at the heart of abortion. The argument is no longer how many cells make a human being, right? What do we say about consciousness, right? Things that we can actually tangibly understand. And of course, there's deep philosophy and ethics into this, right? Like, consciousness is a perfect example. It's not about that. And so I think you're so good to bring up TFP, because what you're seeing now are people who aren't just like, well, I think that life begins here and here. You're seeing people wantonly rally around, get out into the streets, saying that the virtue of not being able to kill my child is somehow depriving me of my right. And there is no explanation to how dark a mentality that is, except knowing that there is, of course, an element of the demonic behind it. Because God loves children. God loves life. I mean, that's the beauty about God. God is a God of life. The book of wisdom says that, I think it's wisdom, might be Hebrews, I think it's wisdom, right? That says that God did not make death, nor does he delight in the destruction of the living. I think that's Hebrews. And so if we know this, then we know that God's order, his ability that love creates, what's the opposite of that? The demons hate us, and they hate you so much, and they hate babies, and they hate Our Lady and everything. They hate them so much that all they can do is destroy. If life is so beautiful, those who radically rally to abortion, they are wantonly embracing the fact that it is this new demonic sacrament of the left. I'm worried for our churches and our shrines and everything, but I'm also really grateful because I love it when the Band-Aid is ripped off of evil and you can stare into the face of people, not saying that they are just evil people, but their deeds, their actions, their thoughts are clearly conformed to the enemy. And that's the thing that we need to confront.
Yeah, and to speak about truth, you're absolutely right when you say that these people they make things up and they make up their own truth. A friend pointed this out to me this past weekend, and he was saying something like, news articles keep reporting the overturning as today they'll say, quote, "Today the decision to overturn the constitutional right to an abortion was made." And he was making a point. He said, this is how you brainwash people. You can't outright say something crazy and add modifiers like constitutional, because that's the whole thing about the decision, right? The justices went through and they said, there is nothing in the Constitution that says that you can murder your child. And we see and we hear the leftists today, they will say, well, it's my right. It's always about rights, like my right. Well, who gave you that right? God didn't give you that right. God didn't give you the right to murder. In fact, he tells you very clearly, thou shalt not murder. But these people, they are so oppressed demonically. And frankly, I mean, can we be surprised? Think about the people who have lived outside of the sacramental grace of their soul for so long. What does that do? Well, sin clouds the intellect. Mm-hmm. And so we shouldn't be surprised at the kinds of evil and crazy things that people say, whether it's in our family or our friend group. My wife Ashley was telling me, like, I'm just so surprised that so many of the people that I follow on Instagram have spoken out against the decision, and they say things like, oh, this is crazy, this is going to destroy everything. And I think a lot of people catastrophize the situation and they think, oh, well, if I can't get an abortion, then it's over. Well, no, not particularly. You just can't kill a baby anymore. So maybe don't have sex. Maybe that's a solution to you never getting pregnant, or like, I really hope that this is next, but maybe they'll get rid of contraception.
You've been reading Clarence Thomas's added, right?
That would be incredible. I think that would really make them squirm. Or maybe get rid of Obergefell. That would be incredible, so that we can go back to really interpreting the Constitution the way that it is, not as some sort of nebulous thing that changes with our whims and our fancy, as we think that it is when we create our own truth. As you said, what's it going to be in 20 years if we keep doing that? At a certain point, you have to sit down and say, well, this is not what the founders had in mind. And frankly, beyond that, because to be honest with you, I don't want to seem unpatriotic or ungrateful, but I don't really care what the founders said. I care about what God said. I care about God's laws, not the laws of this country. The laws of this country oftentimes don't lead to the common good. But God's law does. So that's what I'm going to stick to. And I'm sorry that you can't murder your children anymore in certain states. The reality is that most states are going to open up, and this is the dark side of this, right? You were saying just a few minutes ago that the Band-Aid has been ripped off, and it really has. Now you can see people for what they really are. Look at California; they've doubled down and they've said, we're gonna make an abortion safe haven here. Look at New York, same thing. Look at corporations. Dick's Sporting Goods sent out a letter to their employees, and they said, "Oh, we're so shocked and we're so disheartened, and anybody who's in a state that bans abortion, we're going to give you $4,000 for you to travel anywhere to go get an abortion." So you can see evil for what it is these days. It's not hiding in the shadows anymore. It's out in the open.
We have to sit down as a people. We've talked about this a little bit before with a previous episode when we talked about, what a Catholic country kind of looks like, right? But there are a lot. What we've done is we have this little micro civil war every 4 years. Every time a Supreme Court justice gets appointed, where we believe that law doesn't come from God and therefore ought to be just reinforced by society, by the government, by the people, but instead that laws come from the Supreme Court. Laws come from Congress. Laws come from the executive pen of the president. And people react so violently. I've seen very popular figures now calling for the abolishment of the Supreme Court. Keith Olbermann tweet, freaking love it. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I understand. People are so desperate to have the government inform their moral decisions that laws have to be tied in this way to morality, and not in a way that's biblical, not in a way that's even been tried throughout history. But if my morality, my truth is not enshrined in law, there's just a major malfunction with this country. So with the constitutional analysis you just gave, there are these two broad camps, right? There are originalists. This was Antoine Scalia's, who said that the Constitution is to be interpreted very narrowly. The reason why the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists had a fight that resulted in the Bill of Rights is so that you could literally see your rights. It's why we have amendments and these sorts of things. And then the entirety of law, the entirety of history, the entirety of politics is dictated by if we amend the Constitution, if we add something, if we remove something, but we do it slow and steady because it's not the Bible. We don't just add and remove things. It's not the Bible. The left believes that it's a living document. I've heard the reply that, well, who cares? I mean, they just removed Thomas Jefferson in New York, right? So who cares? These founder fathers were slave-holding white patriarchal men who were from a very narrow time period, which was a horrible, terrible one. And we've evolved so much beyond that. We've become the angels of our better nature. And that's why you shouldn't listen to them nor their writings. If I think something is a right, I could care less what the founders wanted this country to be in, what structure it is. And we reinforce that because we believe that things like democracy is such a right. And it's like the founders never intended for mass democracy. And how's that working out for us right now, right? Direct election of senators. And of course, obvious things. The founders would have never, the government was not in the business of marriage, for instance, right? The government's purpose was to acknowledge the universally accepted truth of what marriage was. It's a man and it's a woman. Obviously, we didn't even have to worry about this, But now we live in a world where they're like, oh, well, they're going to take away contraception and same-sex marriage and everything. And it's not a black pill. It's probably the greatest red pill. I go, well, is it the natural law or is it not the natural law? And if it's not, then why the heck do we have any business for the sake of license, for the sake of intrinsic evils that send people to hell, permitting this kind of thing? Error has no rights. And so I think our framework has to be there. And I know that for some people, even for pro-lifers, they may have not thought of it before. But the issue is not like, oh, hooray, the Supreme Court won this one. The issue is fundamentally, we've gotten so away from the natural law that until the country gets back on track, we all know that it's just headed towards a great, terrible divorce. And who knows what it's going to look like on the other side.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as I was picking up some drive-through order.
Yo, what drive-through though? Wait, what drive-through? What you getting?
Well, Ashley's sick, so we went to Panera. So it's not the greatest of things, but we do have an In-N-Out here in Texas, so that's pretty great. It's a little taste of California. But I was thinking, there's a lot of objectors. We've had an episode of monarchy before. If you haven't listened to it, just go through our YouTube page and you can find it with Charles Colomb. And there's a lot of detractors when it comes to monarchy. And they say, well, why should it be that one person has all of the power? What if there's a bad king? There's no way that we should ever try that in America. Well, is this really any different? I mean, there's a lot of people that we can't vote out who represent very specific interests that are very much against our interests, against the interest of God, because God has rights. Are we really in a position to say that to go and transform? Because you just mentioned, what is it going to look like? Because we are heading towards a divorce. Would it be crazy to say that maybe there should be something, at the very least, that looks more like a republic, the kind of republic that the founders intended, or even crazier? Is it crazy for me to think that maybe there should be a king, and that king should legislate for the common good of the people? I mean, that's what we really need. It's not a crazy idea to think that way. But I do think that there is going to be a great divorce. And, I think it's foolish to think that the country is not very old, first off, but empires come and go all the time. It's foolish for us to think that, because we're in a modern time, that the fall of an empire cannot come tomorrow or in 50 years or in 100 years. It happens all the time in history. So maybe America is going to look a little bit different in the future. And I think that when you approach it from that perspective, I think it opens you up to try things like a monarchy or maybe even secession, where a state like Texas, I know Texas wants to be its own thing, but how great would it be if, like, Texas and Florida and other like-minded states came together and they legislated for their people? They actually represented the people that live there. They would pass things like these abortion bans. They would pass things like not recognizing so-called gay marriage. Like, those things are for the common good of the people. And it's not wild for us to think that. Obviously, there's a lot of different streams that you have to cross to make that work. Whether it's going to work or not, that's not really up to us to really predict right now. But I think it's foolish for us to say we shouldn't try anything because it's not what it's been in the past. It's just, I don't know. That sounds crazy to me. As long as, for example, we're not passing abortion or gay marriage or things like, obviously those things are against the common good. So yeah, I here in Texas, I'm kind of glad that I'm here now. I take a little bit of pride there to be in a state that introduced a heartbeat bill that has inspired other states to do the same. Mm-hmm. And it's fantastic.
You're very fortunate, because I love Colorado. I mean, there's so
Colorado's
many memories.
Awesome.
It's a great, and obviously, like, a place is not its government, but it can help influence what that place is. But it's just really distressing to see Colorado used to be more of a swing state politically. It's a very polarized kind of state, right? Still. And I think that's good, because there's some very much sanity that still exists. But in terms of our policies and that sort of thing, it's becoming a California light. It's in the short amount of time I've been back, I already am like, wouldn't it be nice if the Augustine Institute just moved to Texas or Tennessee or Florida or something? I want to. Wouldn't it be nice if they didn't kill babies? I want to piggyback off something you said real quick about the role of the king and government, and we're wired for monarchy. We're not wired for mass democracy, and this is an obvious choice. The idea that prior to the Supreme Court decision, the response from the left was pack the court. Well, if we get a bunch of unelected bureaucrats to swing one way, our way, that's good, as opposed to the other way. I mean, that's just, and now that we don't like what they did, let's just destroy the whole thing. In a well-functioning society, monarchy or republic, but the answer is that the states having, for instance, to fight over abortion, that is much more in common with what the country was supposed to be. If you're going to have something so radical, never mind the fact that this should never even exist in the first place. But the idea was that the federal government is not supposed to have the daily interaction in our lives that it does now. We're fighting, people know their presidents, their Supreme Courts, they even know where the Supreme Courts live now, but they don't know their governors and they don't know their mayors. And that's really sad. We've definitely gotten away from our roots. And I like the idea of the monarchy because what does the king represent? See, the king actually like the church, is supra politica. He's above politics. He's not interested in legislating, so to speak. He is there to preserve the tradition and the esprit de corps, the nationhood or the patriothood of the country. And so the king, in order for a king to be a king, this is why it's so important. This is why part of the issue with why as our empire dies, as Catholics, especially traditional Catholics, we can look back and go, oh, because we separated church and state, we completely got into Enlightenment territory of modern nation states. And that at the root is an issue, because the only way that the king is a king is if he's appointed, right, by God, right, through oftentimes his bishop or pope or whatever, but that he's appointed, right? And that the king has therefore a moral obligation tied to his soul to reign properly, because he answers to the vicar of Christ, right? So he answers to God. And so it's terribly distressing because I think that we're now in such a gutter fight. And I wish that it was on some other topic of the natural law, which didn't result in murder. Intrinsic evils are always evil, deeply evil, every single instance, of course. I think it breaks my heart that we're fighting like this over abortion, the actual killing of children, as opposed to contraception, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like there's just like these degrees of fights that as Catholics you have to be willing to fight for. And some of them are going to be very different fights than other ones. But the reason why abortion is so deep is because it is the very heart of whom God made us to be as a human race. And it is so religious that the book of Jeremiah says, even before you were in the womb, I knew you. And Rudy, I'll tell you, for me, it's deeply personal because I'm adopted. And, the highest race who kill their children are Blacks. So I'm extremely grateful to my birth mother because I know that was not an easy decision. And I know very little about her, but I knew that she was a Methodist. So probably the African-American Methodist Church, presuming. And they're not very conservative. They're not very traditional when it comes to this kind of issue. So I don't know what my background of my birth mom or maybe if my birth father was involved. I simply don't know. There's no paperwork. There's no record. But I'm just aware of the rates of how many babies are killed. And I'm very grateful because I'm very keenly aware that I feel like God really did pick me, right? He handpicked me and he placed me with my family, and he placed me with my wits and my soul. And he has demonstrated for me very directly what it's like not to kill your children. And I want that opportunity for so many other little babies. And I love this critique. I love to hate it so much, but there are so many people who really pretend that the pro-life movement is nothing. Oh, you just care for babies, you don't care whatever. The fact that they're bombing pregnancy centers should be telling. The fact that the church and us, we give so much money also to support single moms and mothers in pregnancy crises, and we don't just leave people abandoned because thank God you kept your kid. Oh, they're beautiful. Goodbye. These people demonically influenced on the left, they don't do anything like that. there is no support. And so it's kind of with a very unfortunate sense of the worst kind of irony that when I see rioting happening in places like Los Angeles, I go, man, dude, the rates out there are just so terrible. And it's a perpetuating cycle if you don't break out and just see how beautiful life is and how we should therefore better ourselves in order to perpetuate that, the beauty of life, the sanctity of life. People don't care. And at the end of the day, when you've lived in a materialistic culture for, well, now we know it can take just a generation, really a couple, you see what the effects are. If people believe that matter and license are the only things that are your truth, it's no surprise. And it's no surprise that so many pro-abortion arguments become, obviously, because we know the roots, they become very quickly these eugenic arguments. Well, these people are going to have too many children. They don't know how to control themselves, right? They don't know how to wait till marriage before sex. They don't know how to rise up out of poverty. So you're going to have more mouths to feed, more poverty. And I'm just like, oh, great. So why stop there? This is the legitimate eugenics argument for races that have been used for 100 years. So why stop there? Margaret Sanger was a certified eugenist. And her comments about the destruction of the Negro race are extremely telling. But of course, it's not surprising. But we've pretended that part doesn't matter, right? And yet I hear these arguments. I see them because, as you have, I have plenty of friends back in Los Angeles, per se. Been doing a lot of just unfollowing and unfriending. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna flame out or anything, but just like, I'm not into this. Like, if you support killing children, if you see this and you support killing children, like, honestly, like, yeah, don't talk to me. I mean, say hello, I'll say hello back, but like, I don't have any, my filial piety sometimes I know can be very, very tricky. And I do love people who have deeply erroneous opinions that can actually lead to hell and ruin, obviously. But just for today, it's just nice to sit there and go, you know what? No, you don't get to kill babies. You don't get to kill babies. And then you repost memes that we can't show our beloved audience about how you shouldn't kill babies.
Yeah, I mean, I was I was at work when it happened. We got the news from an insider chat that we have, and one of the friends that was responding to my coworker was like, "Well, we have a victory, but let's not gloat." No, I think we should gloat a little bit. We really should.
They say we need to be magnanimous and generous in victory. This is true. But I'm gonna take a moment, right, Rudy? Go on. Take a moment.
We need to generously share good memes about how they lost today. When it comes to friends and family who are obviously on the other side of the coin of the equation here, it's good to talk to them, give it a college try. But if you know that that's not going to happen, if they're just completely set in their ways, maybe it's not a good idea for you to conversate with them as much, because I had this situation too come up where I was thinking, this person thinks obviously completely the opposite of what the truth is. And I want to bring them to the truth. And so I'm going to give it a shot to try and change their mind. But at a certain point, you're not going to change their mind. And sometimes we get into these cycles where we want to like win the argument. And I have to stop and say, well, am I trying to win the argument or am I trying to convert this person? And so I think that would be good advice if you find yourself in that situation where it's like, man, my family's like speaking out against it. I'm seeing it on my Instagram. Obviously, if you don't want to see it on your Instagram, that's your choice. You don't have to follow them.
Yeah, right.
But just if you find yourself in the situation where you're fighting, just think like, am I trying to convert this person or am I trying to win the argument? Because I think most of the time we try and win the argument, and that's fine. But just don't take it too far. Right. But you know what? The bombing of these abortion centers, I mean, not the abortion centers, the pregnancy clinics that we've seen have just been a symptom of the real attack, which is the church. Look at all of the churches that have been attacked. Here in Houston, actually, there was a story. I can read you the headline. The headline here. Let me look at it. Mm-hmm. The headline says, "Prepare this weekend for a summer of rage unless you like and subscribe to the Glad Trad podcast and share with a friend. Actually, that's not the headline, but you should consider liking and subscribing. You've made it this far into the conversation. That would be fantastic if you could do that for us. Share us with a friend. We just crossed 1,000 subscribers. That's incredible. We love every one of you. Buy our indulgences. You can support us through Patreon. But to go back to these attacks. Here in Houston, there was not too far from me where I live, it's like 10 minutes away in Katy, Texas. Mm-hmm. Somebody went in and stole a tabernacle, and they took out the most blessed sacrament from the tabernacle. And, when we heard about it, certain people were like, oh, the tabernacle, it's so valuable. It's made out of gold. Yeah, the tabernacle's nice. It's lovely. It's meant to be beautiful, to hold our blessed Lord. But ultimately, what was at stake there? It was the desecration of our blessed Lord. Mm-hmm. And we saw also in Brooklyn, there was a very historic tabernacle. It was made with like the blood, sweat, and tears and wealth of the community, or lack of wealth from the community. These churches, they were built by poor people, and they gave everything for the greater glory of God to build these wonderful churches that sadly are empty these days. But they took this like jewel encrusted tabernacle outside of the church. They spilled the most blessed sacrament all over the floor. They decapitated angels, and this is a theme that we're seeing. I just want to bring up the fact that this is really gonna amp up. It really is, because the attacks against the church are actually like we were saying earlier. The Band-Aid's coming off, and you're seeing people for who they really are, and they hate the church. That's why they're bombing these pregnancy centers that are funded by the Catholic Church. They understand that the church is at the forefront. The church has power. The church has authority. And so they're coming against it. Why? Because they're demonically oppressed. So I just wanted to bring up the fact, this weekend, there's some crazy stuff going on. And I hope that people are aware of the security of their parishes, of the security of the most blessed sacrament. Do you have a plan for what happens when somebody comes into the church and tries to disrupt the Mass? Are you going to be sitting at the edge of the pew waiting for that to happen? Are you going to be prepared? Do you have a plan? Who are your friends? Who are the ushers? What are they going to do? If you're in a place where you can carry a concealed weapon, are you going to carry it with you this weekend to make sure that nothing crazy happens? Obviously, if somebody disrupts Mass, that's not license for you to like shoot them. But what if somebody comes in? Another story in Nigeria, there was a bunch of Catholic martyrs over Pentecost.
50.
That can happen in Nigeria. More common over there, maybe less common here, but that doesn't mean it's never going to happen here. Look at the California guy who was just arrested trying to kill Justice Kavanaugh. Mm-hmm. The violence is escalating. We are just, it's just getting so insane. And I just want you to know you should have a plan. Try and figure it out. Talk to your priest. Talk to the ushers. Form a men's group. There's a really cool, was it Catholic Defense League on Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram.
They're awesome. Follow them on Instagram. They have great practical advice on how to get started. But things are just getting crazy, man. Things are getting out of hand, and you just need to be prepared for that.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you say. I'm very fortunate because I'm part of the usher team at church, and we have a dedicated safety team too. I know, dude. I like it look good up there, but
dude, I would not go up against you, man. Your broad shoulders. Like,
I'm ready to regulate. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to just panty up.
Punch you in the face.
No. This is so true, and it's unfortunate because, again, in the beginning of this podcast, I said, our greatest weapon that Our Lady has given us through our Lord is the Most Holy Rosary. That is a weapon that sanctifies the world. That is a weapon that will change the hearts and minds of our interlocutors. And it's fun to dab on them. It's fun it's very easy. It's very fun to say very dank, mean things sometimes. I want everybody to come to the fullness of the truth. We've set out in this podcast, we've set out in our personal lives the people around us, even our enemies, we're supposed to love them so much that we want them to experience heaven. We want them to know what it's like, that the Lord loves them and that they should love the Lord. And our blessed Lord says himself to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This is extraordinarily difficult for me. There are entire batches sometimes of people or individuals. And I remember my first thought so many times is, I have nothing but vitriol. I do not want to pray for them. A quote that I say, which is true, is that it is by grace of God that we are shielded from the ramifications of our actions, because the fires of hell are not hot enough. And at the end of the day, hell is a real place and people go there. And I imagine that if Dante could come alive, or could appear, God willing, if he's in heaven, could appear on our plane now, there would be an update in the Inferno for those who wantonly kill babies. Not just those who support, right, who cast a ballot and pretend it's all good and would never have an abortion personally, but those who wantonly kill babies. And if you think that there aren't those sorts of people out there, well, fun fact, everybody, that is what's all over the news nowadays. You go to a live stream, you watch some of these people. I'm reading a headline right now. It's on the Gateway Pundit, and it was just talking about how this guy is screaming at this kid's face how he wantonly, he effing loves killing babies. So again, we're beyond clumps of cells and bundles. That's what they're saying. It's shock value. It's evil. It's absolutely evil. And it must be hacked to pieces. I'm not therefore calling, I can't imagine any Catholic worth his salt, therefore calling that we should meet our enemies with the same sort of violence that they meet us. If they bomb our pro-life centers, we're going to bomb Planned Parenthoods. No, that is not the weapons of a Roman Catholic, of any Carter Catholic, of any Christian. We are a defensive people. And so we will, however, God has given us the beautiful things, our churches, the sacraments, these pro-life centers, the ability to save souls. How many women were going to walk into Planned Parenthood and they saw someone praying outside and they didn't? There's hundreds of stories, thousands of stories, and of course, offspring to prove it. But because we have these gifts, God also tells us to sell a cloak, right, and to buy two swords. He tells us that we have a right to defend ourselves. And if someone comes in looking to use deadly intent on your place of business, on your Catholic organization, and especially on your churches, you have an obligation, or you have a duty to defend your people. You have a duty to defend the things of God. And so I really do pray, this is so genuine, I really pray that there is no violence, but I know that there are so many people with evil intents in their heart. And we've seen this manifest. This is like the last acceptable domestic terrorism in this country, because I don't know if any of our audience, you saw the Instagram post that we did the day that this got aborted, but I didn't even know that Roe v. Wade had been overturned. And so I made that because I was scrolling. I have a couple of Telegram channels that were showing just like, look, over time, look, we've had all these specifically anti-Catholic things. They stole a tabernacle, as Rudy was talking about. There was a tabernacle stolen where it wasn't about the theft of the gold. It was purely to get our Lord. And I'm reading tweets from, the Satanic Temple of, that it's saying that, we have abortion as a sacrament. So if you want an abortion, come join us. This isn't a game. This is not a game. This is the battle of good and evil made manifest in our lives. And so, again, Rudy is completely right. I just want to echo it. If your church doesn't have a safety protocol, if you're not part of a quick reaction force of guys just to come to make sure that the things of God are okay, you need to do that, especially as a young Catholic man. That's our domain. Okay? There's the sheep and there's the sheepdog. And I refuse to be a sheep except for the Lord, And when I'm at Mass and I have my concealed carry, Rudy's very fortunate because he doesn't even need one, Texas. But I look upon people who I'm now very close with, and I look at the place where I married my wife, and I look at the place where I've encountered our Lord most intimately in the holy sacrifice and the Eucharist. And I say, I know that there are people, and I've seen them because they vandalize Catholic churches all the time, that hate this. They hate it. And even God desires the salvation of those people. But if they try anything that's going to result in the destruction of life and livelihood, I don't want to be one of those people who stood by and did absolutely nothing. And so we do need to reach out. We do need to convert, and it's the Holy Spirit that works through us to do these things. But yeah, we have absolutely every single duty and every single obligation to protect that which God has given us.
Yeah, and it may not even be extreme, where you're going to have to defend your life. I like what you said, Jordan. You know, if there's anything you don't want, it's going to be the regret of not standing up and trying to defend the church from an intruder who comes in and tries to disrupt the mass. Honestly, you're going to feel awful and terrible all the way home, thinking, I could have done something. I could have helped. I could have been a little bit more vigilant. I could have figured out how to, or suggest like, oh, that the doors here in my parish, they close the doors and lock them at a certain point. Like, that's a good suggestion you can bring up to the pastor of the church. But you don't want that regret of saying, I could have done something. I could have done something for the greater glory of God, for my community. That is just something, it feels terrible. Like, I've been in situations where, there's a lot less at stake, where people will say something in front of me and I feel a tug in my heart to correct them, or to say something, to kind of alleviate or make right the situation. Like, say, for example, they say something about the church. Mm-hmm. And there have been times where I didn't say anything and I feel horrible, like all the way home. You think maybe that was an opportunity for me for the greater glory of God, to correct that person. You don't want that regret. So just do it. There's a lot less at stake than you think. Mm-hmm. of joining in and trying to defend your church, or say something to your family or to your friends or to a stranger on the road, on the street, who very obviously is against the church.
There's a scene in Lord of the Rings. This is the Return of the King scene, where they're fighting. It's at the end, like before the Black Gate. Oh no, it's the Battle of Pelennor Fields, right? And so the Riders of Rohirrim have just charged through the orcs, and they're just leveling up, right? They're just killing them all, and it looks like they're going to be able to relieve Gondor, and it's no problem. And we see this victory. We can feel this victory rising, and then you hear these stomps and these roars from over the hill, and the Easterlings and their Oliphants have come. And so it's like, just as this victory has been accomplished, we realize that we're just on the cusp of, again, this is spiritual warfare. We are far from over. It's just the first act, baby. But what does King Theoden do, right? He rallies his horsemen and he charges the foe again. And that's what we have to do. We're not here to stomp our foes down into the dust and make them feel just unreasonably is awful. We're really here genuinely to love. I mean, that's what we're called to love. I'm being a little jokey, audience, but we genuinely are really called to love. So Rudy, as we close out, I just want to actually pivot and just ask you maybe to reach out here. If you had something to say to a pro-abortionist, and I'm not talking about like the weird ladies that paint themselves all in blood and like scream at expletives at everything, but just somebody who thinks that this is the mistake, right? What is the thing that you would like to say?
I would say that the truth that they think is universal, that perhaps the baby isn't a child until it's born, or that it's just a mass of cells inside of a uterus, or that it's their body and therefore their choice to terminate a pregnancy. I would just say it's a lot more simple than that. Our sexuality, this is what it really boils down to. Our sexuality is a gift from God. It is a very holy thing. And this is why we rally so much against abortion, because it's an inversion of our sexuality. When we look at our sexuality as if it's something convenient, as it's just some sort of bodily function, like going number 1 or 2 when you go to the bathroom, when we degrade something so holy to that, it's just natural that we're gonna not understand that the byproduct, the very act of creating life that we cooperate with God with, that's just nothing. It's simple. It's simple to look at it as if it's something just disposable. But our sexuality is meant to bring life into the world. And like I said, to cooperate with God, to bring life into the world. And it's by that very act that you're alive. It's by that very loving act that you came into existence in your mother's womb. And so it's not about what you think is true, because it's not. The reality is that there is a beautiful life inside of the womb. And that's what's at stake. How many children have had to die? This has been the most crazy Holocaust that we've been through. How many children have to die? How many lives have been lost that could have really made a difference in the world? A lot of people think about social justice. They think about how they can improve the world. Well, how can we improve the world when we kill all of our offspring? How many lives could have made a difference in this world because of abortion? It's an evil thing. It's an evil thing. And anyone who thinks that this is something awful, that the Supreme Court revoked Roe versus Wade, I invite you to rethink that position. I invite you to rethink about the sanctity of life. That's what the Catholic position is at the heart of it.
That's absolutely beautiful. I'm constantly in awe of how deeply God loves us. Yeah. And that includes those who have deliberately chosen to go as far away from him as possible. There isn't a sin you can commit that cannot be overcome by God's forgiveness if we turn back to him. I'm astounded by and honored by the stories of a lot of very, very heroic women who had an abortion, encouraged others to have an abortion, who were rabid about abortions, and who responded to God's call and now have turned back to the fullness of the truth. And they let their stories become that part of the battle cry. As men, we have a solemn duty to love and respect the women of our lives in such a way that to have the openness to life means to have a clean and healthy courtship, to marry and to stay with them, and to form a family unit. And so I think that if you're out there, if you're listening and maybe you've had an abortion, perhaps you've encouraged someone to have an abortion, maybe you've not had an abortion, maybe you would never have an abortion personally, but you support people, you think that you're pro-choice, quote unquote, you think that this is a right. I would really encourage you just to sit back and think that if God loves us so much, loves you so much, made you in his own image and likeness, that love is not selfish and it's not just for you, but that he made me, he made Rudy, he made our families, and he made children. Even those in the womb, God knows, and he's formed them, has set them apart for all of time. And so I would just really encourage you to understand that the reason why we must fight, the reason why you may see Catholics doing their weird things with their rosaries and kneeling down and having their fetus posters and praying divine mercies and wearing their weird hats and shirts, the reason that we do this is because God has commanded us to love the entirety of the human person, from conception to natural death. That is our great charge. And it doesn't mean that one stage of life is therefore insignificant or lacks dignity or importance as compared to another stage of life. But this is the fight which we have to take up, and we can't rest. And I encourage you to become part of that. I encourage you to really think deeply and honestly about your convictions. And if you're on the precipice, I want you to just really imagine, because it's true, just the deep love that God has for you and for children and for everybody. And also the last takeaway is that the reason why we do this, the last reason, is because we want the salvation of souls. We want the salvation of the souls of babies. We want the salvation of the souls of adults. We know that hell is a very real place. It's not a frightening bedtime fairy tale. Evil is real, and evil hates you. It hates the good, the true, and the beautiful. And to participate in abortion activities, even just in thought, is a participation in evil. And we have to conform ourselves to the image of Christ. And this means that we need to fight evil to its core. And the way that we do it is not with guns. It's not with swords. That's not the Catholic way. It's with the rosary. It's with prayers and fasting and the mass and supplications. And if you're shocked by how the Supreme Court could have done this, if you're looking at all the political ramifications, know that we mean it very seriously when we think that it's God's will that this was done on the solemnity of the Sacred Heart. And so don't be an enemy of our Lord. He wants us all to be friends. No longer slaves, says the Lord, but I call you friends. And we'd be more than happy to be alongside you. And even if you're not there 100% yet, you can always reach out to us privately. You know, we don't bite. We're a little dank, but we don't bite. We'll give you the truth, but also we'll give you the love as well, because that's what God calls us to do. So thank you all so much for watching. Oh my goodness. I hope that you all leave comments just celebrating this great victory. I hope that you leave comments expressing the joy and know that we're about to gear up for some more. If you liked what we had to say, and let's be honest, Rudy, we know that they liked what we had to say. Otherwise, they wouldn't be watching. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your stories. Hit that notification bell, all those YouTube-y things. We have a Patreon. That's our indulgences, so come get them. There are some really, really simple and cool perks that you can get, including early episode access, the ability to even come on the podcast and tell your own stories, as we've had a couple of times. We just love interacting. We really do appreciate all the support. The most important thing you can, of course, do is continue to pray for Rudy and myself and our families, and for all the prayers you can offer for the church, especially for this weekend, and prayers for our enemies, prayers for those who persecute us. Perhaps you'll offer your Eucharist this weekend for those who do not know the light of Christ, because it's by that sort of thing that they come to the fullness of the truth. So until the next time, God bless you, may He keep you. We'll see you on the next one. Adios.